Shabbat Shalom to each and every one of you. Welcome to this live radio channel. Today we have again our weekly reading, and we're gonna have Vayeshev. All right, it's so wonderful to be here again, sharing you the week's reading in our reading Vayeshev. I hope that you all are enjoying your week, and it is the third day of Chanukah, and it's wonderful to spend it with our family. This year is actually one of the quiet celebration of the year, and I'm so much glad because despite of the things happening in our surroundings, we still have the chance to reach this year, and that we still have the chances to develop our relationship within our households, our children, in our marriage, and to even reflect within our lives. So I understand that you might be going through different tasks in your life, and I just hope that this week's parasha will give you some good insights of life. We're gonna talk about the Vayeshev because last week's reading was Vayishlach, and it was the recounted how Jacob had wrestled with the angel of the Lord before returning to the promised land to be reconciled with his estranged brother Esau. No longer he is named Yaakov, or heel holder of Esau, but his name was also changed to Israel, which means contender with God. A transformed Jacob finally returned to Hebron to see his father Isaac, 34 years after he had left home. However, on the way back, his beloved wife Rachel died while giving birth to his 12th son, Benjamin. Rachel have two children, that is Joseph and Benjamin. So this week's parasha begins with Jacob living back in the land promised to Abraham and Isaac with their 12 children. But the narrative quickly turns to Jacob's favorite son, Joseph, who was 17 years old at that time. And how do we know that he is 17? Because it is also stated in the parasha, or in this portion. So turn on your Bibles into Genesis 37 from the verse 1 to the chapter 40. Our reading consists of Genesis 37 to chapter 40. So Jacob begins the parasha of Vayeshev in the land of his fathers, dwelling in the land of Canaan. His Haran years were behind him, with Laban many miles away on the other side of a pile of stones, attesting to a non-aggression pact between them. A truce of sorts had been made with Esau. Dinah had been rescued and avenged. Remember that in the past reading, Dinah was violated. Therefore, her brothers had avenged for her part. And Rachel died and buried and mourned. The 100-year-old patriarch now hoped that he had experienced enough hardship and heartbreak for a lifetime, and looked forward for some tranquility years in the land of his father's dwelling, that is in Hebron, as his sons shepherded his flocks in the hills and valleys of Canaan. But this was not to be. Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a many-colored coat. When his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. It were not a help the fact that Joseph preferred the company of the children of Bilhah and Zilpah, whom Leah's sons regarded as their inferior because they were the sons of the handmaids, and that he was constantly bringing his father critical reports of his brother's behavior. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it to his brothers. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright, and behold, your sheep stood all around and bowed down to my sheaves. Then he dreamed yet another dream and told it to his brothers. Behold, the sun and the moon and 11 stars bowed down to him. So his father rebuked him. What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow down ourselves to you, to the earth? But Jacob said this only to diffuse the jealousy between the brothers, while keeping the matter in mind. So we have to understand here that there is some sort of jealousy between brothers, and it is very clear that Jacob actually loved Joseph more than all his children. And remember also that Joseph loved Rachel, and therefore it was one of the reasons why he actually worked to Laban for another 7 years just to get Rachel, because it was not Leah he wanted to work for the first year, and because he was cheated, so therefore he have to work more to get Rachel. Right. Now we're gonna talk about the sale of Joseph. So Jacob sends Joseph to check up on his brothers who have gone north with the flocks. And Joseph finally locates them in Dothan near Shechem. When they saw him from afar, even before he came near to them, they plotted against him to kill him. They said, one man to his brother, behold, here comes the dreamer. Let us kill him and throw him into some pits. And we will say, a wild animal was devoured him, then we shall see what will become of his dreams. But Reuben, the eldest of his brothers, said to them, let us not kill him. Do not shed his blood, but throw him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand upon him, so as to save him from their hands, to bring him back to his father. It came to pass when Joseph came to his brothers that they stripped Joseph of his coat, the many-colored coat that was on him. They took him and threw him into a pit. The pit was empty, there was no water in it. They sat down to eat bread. Then they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites was coming from Gilead with their camels, bearing gum, balsam, and laudanum, going to carry it down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and not let our hand be against him, for he is our brother and our flesh. So Reuben was not there when Judah proposed that Joseph be sold. when he comes back. Intending to rescue Joseph, he finds the pit empty. He berates his brothers, but the deed has already been done. Now they must find a way to explain Joseph's disappearance to their father. So what they did next is that they dipped Joseph's coat of the blood of a goat and bring it to their father. This we have found, they say. So he recognized it and said, "It is my son's coat. A wild animal has devoured him." And Joseph had surely been torn to pieces. So the father was very, very sad, and the children tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. And he said that, "For I will go down to the grave mourning my son." So Joseph, in the meantime, is taken to Egypt, where he is sold to Potiphar, a minister in Pharaoh's court. Now we're gonna jump into Judah and Tamar. The saga of Joseph is interrupted to relate an incident in the life of Judah. Judah separates from his brothers, marries, and has three children, Onan, and Shelah. When comes of age, Judah marries him to a woman by the name of Tamar. Was wicked in the sight of God and dies young. So Judah tells Onan to perform the duty of a brother-in-law to marry the widow of a childless brother and raise up progeny for your brother. So a practice called Yibum. Yibum, you can find that in Deuteronomy 25:5-6. It is something that if the wife of the first son, if the first, how do I say this? The first-born son who is married to a woman, if he dies, then the brother can take the woman, and that they should perform this yibum. It means that the woman shall give birth to a son in honor to the first brother. So Onan, who does not desire to father children that will be regarded as his brothers, spilled his seed to the ground. He too dies an early death in punishment for his sin. So since Onan too had died childless, Shelah has now supposed to marry Tamar. But time passes and Tamar realizes that Judah has no intention of marrying her to his third son. She resolves to find a way to have a child from Judah's family. If not from Shelah, then from Judah himself. So she plotted also, Tamar plotted to have a child from Judah. So it was told to Tamar that uh, that Judah, her father-in-law, is going to Timnah to attend his sheep. So she dressed herself with covered herself and then put her a veil, and she wrapped herself and went to the crossroads. So Judah saw her and thought that she was a prostitute because she covered her face. So he turned, by the way, and said that let's do these things. And he actually didn't know that it was the daughter-in-law. So in exchange to this, Judah promises her a kid goat from the flock in payment. But she didn't want this. Instead, she wanted a signet, a cord, and a staff from the hand of Judah. Because in those days, the harlot are always persecuted whenever they are caught. All right? And their punishment is death. But now, 3 months after, she became pregnant. So Judah said that she should be brought out and she will be burnt. So when she was presented into the community, she then presented her she have presented the things that she had in her hands. Those are the payment that she received from Judah. We have to notice that in this chapter, she did not pronounce Judah's name. She said it this way: "By the man to whom this belong, I am pregnant." And she said, "Acknowledge, please, whose are these? The signet, the cord, and the staff." So think now that all the things that she asked from Judah is now presented in front of Judah, since this is the rules within the community and within their faith. So Judah acknowledged them and said, "She has been more righteous than I." So Tamar gives birth to twins. The name is Peretz, bursting forth because he pushed his way first out of the womb, despite the fact that his brother's hand emerged first. And the other twin is Zerach, or shining, because the midwife had tied a crimson thread on his hand to mark him as the firstborn. So there was still a mark between the two, Peretz and Zerach. Now, let's go on. Let's go back to Joseph. This is about the libel. And when it comes to the libel, this is the wrong accusation or the false accusation of Potiphar's wife to Joseph. So back to Joseph, who is rising in the ranks of the servants of Potiphar, his Egyptian master. His master saw that God was with him and that God made successful everything that he did. So Joseph found favor in his sight, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had he put into his hand. Potiphar's wife was attracted to the handsome fortuitous youth. It came to pass after these things that this master's wife laid eyes upon Joseph. So she tried her very best to seduce him, and Joseph reasoned that everything that my master have here is in my hands, but apart from that, he kept you because you are his wife. So I will not do this wicked thing because my master is a wonderful man and he's very honest to me. So I don't want to sin against God. So what happens is that since Potiphar's wife is rejected, on one occasion when no one else was home, she grabbed hold of his clothes, of Joseph's clothes, to get away from her. And Joseph ran away and left his garment in the hand, and went outside. So she decides to avenge herself on him and tells her husband that Joseph tried to force himself on her. "When I lifted up my voice and cried, he left his garment with me and fled." That was her word. So Joseph is thrown into the royal dungeon. Now, we're gonna talk about more dreams. So Joseph's charisma, enterprising spirit, and divine blessing follow him to prison. Before long, the officer of the prison committed to Joseph's hands all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatever they did there, he was the doer of it because God was with him. And whatever he did, God made it successful. So years passed, then Pharaoh's chief butler and his chief baker, each of whom had committed some offenses against their king, are thrown into the prison where Joseph was and are entrusted to his care. One morning, Joseph finds them in a troubled mood, and both of them have dreams. And "Do not interpretations belong to God?" says Joseph. "Tell me them." So the chief butler relates its dream, and Joseph offers the following interpretations about the dream of the chief butler. And now it was the chief baker's turn. Liking Joseph's interpretation of his colleague's dream, he also spoke of his own, which Joseph interprets. Joseph has a favor to ask from the soon-to-be freed butler. And think of me when it shall be well with you, and show kindness, please, to me. Mention me to Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should put me into the dungeon. So 3 days later, Pharaoh celebrates his birthday and remembers the two ministers he had ordered thrown in jail. He reinstates the chief butler and hangs the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. So the chief butler did not remember Joseph. It concludes in this parasha that the butler actually forgot him. So now we're gonna have some commentary from our sages regarding the topics that we have spoken. So let's have some mind boggling or mind changing about the beginning of the parasha. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph was 17 years old. You can find that in Genesis 37, verse 2. Should not have the verse said, these are the generations of Jacob, and then following the children, blah, blah, blah. But why Joseph? Because everything that happened to Jacob happened to Joseph. As Jacob was born circumcised, so was Joseph born circumcised. As Jacob's mother was infertile, so was Joseph's mother infertile. As Jacob's mother had difficulty in childbirth, so did Joseph's mother have difficulty in childbirth. As Jacob's mother bore two sons, so did Joseph's mother bear two sons. And as Jacob was hated by his brother, so was Joseph hated by his brothers. As Jacob's brothers sought to kill him, so did Joseph's brothers seek to kill him. So there's a big relevance in here. Jacob was a shepherd and Joseph was a shepherd. Jacob was persecuted, Joseph was persecuted. Jacob was blessed with 10 blessings and Joseph was blessed with 10 blessings. So Jacob was exiled from the Holy Land and Joseph was exiled from the land. And if we're gonna go through all of the things that Jacob had actually went through, we can see a big relevance to Jacob and his son. Right. So now we're gonna talk about the Joseph brought their evil report to his father, and we're gonna read this from Pirkei de Rabbeinu HaKodosh. Two righteous men were punished on account of the bearing of malevolent reports, Jacob and Joseph. Why? Because Joseph spoke badly of his brother, he was incarcerated in prison for 12 years. And because Jacob listened to these reports, the divine spirit departed from him for 22 years. And this teaches us that one who speaks negatively of one another is punished once, while someone who listens to negative talk but about another is twice punished. What can we see here is that probably not all kinds of sin are actually worth it to be applied legally. Some sin actually that are hidden in our lives can be exposed somehow, and we are actually suffering from them in many ways. Therefore, it is important to develop ourselves constantly. It is important to excel in the changes of our lives and to find what is good. And I'm gonna read something here. I found something here in the commentaries. Right. So since it is Chanukah, we're gonna read this. All right. He refused, and he said to his master's wife, "How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" So from the Midrash Rabbah, Joseph said to her, "I am afraid of the Holy One, blessed be he." But she said, "But he is not here." So she drove him from room to room and from chamber to chamber until she brought him to her bed. Above it was engraved an idol, which she covered with a sheet. And Joseph said to her, "You have covered its face. How much more then should you fear him of whom it is written?" That is in Zachariah 4:10, "The eyes of the Lord that run to and fro through the whole earth." So is it possible that Joseph at 17 years of age, with all the hot blood of youth, could act thus? Surely the Torah is not telling us the whole thing. Thereupon, he produced the book of Genesis and read the stories of Reuben and Judah. If scriptures did not suppress anything in the case of these who were older in their father's home, how much the more in the case of Joseph, who was younger and his own master? And he say, how then can I do great wickedness? Should not Joseph have said, how then can we do this great wickedness and sin against God? But Joseph did not want to share anything with her, not even the pronouns we. He just said I. So he's just speaking of himself in his faith, in his loyalty to God. So the chief, and then going back to the last, it's the chief butler did not remember Joseph but forgot him. Because Joseph placed his trust in him, he had to remain in prison for another 2 years. Thus it says, "Fortunate is the man who places his trust in God and does not turn to the arrogant." So remember that the butler was one of the among the two imprisoned persons that were important into the life of Pharaoh. And when he reinstated the butler, I believe that Joseph actually saw that he probably might have the chance to get out of the prison. And since God wants us to trust only in Him and not on any man with position or whatever kind of position we may be seeing in the spiritual realm, it is not our position to trust in them. So if we are convicted of a message for this person, we should be happy for whatever will come in the life, but we should not take the honor that oh, it is I who have messaged you these dreams, and therefore now that it is coming to pass, you should pay a debt to me. Because actually we are just an instrument for all these kinds of message, and we have nothing to take for ourselves. But lest we just have to trust God, and only to Him then He will bring us out of our circumstances and in any sorts of misery. He will give us peace. And I hope that the light in you will shine much more powerful than it had started. So that's the message for this week. And will be next week will be Mikates from the end. Yes, that is in Genesis 41. And I hope that you would enjoy it until that day would come. So for now, we'll just have to have a prayer and recognize all the wonderful miracles that God had given us. And I wish you all wonderful day and time wherever you are in this world. So God bless you, and I hope to see you again.